may not think a small front yard could become a food forest, but I'm going to show you what is possible in this complete garden update. You've just seen about 100 species of plants in that one shot. That's all inside the fence of my front yard. It's only about 20 feet from where I'm standing to the sidewalk. And then from the sidewalk to the street is another 8 feet. So I've got a lot packed into a small amount of space, and I utilize every little bit of sun wherever I can. Some places are shady and I can't grow there, but everywhere else I've got a pot or something in the ground growing. So we're going to take a look first at this section here where most of my annuals are grown in the ground. This is the entrance to the biggest section of my garden. It's anchored here by milkweed, and bees are all over this milkweed. From here on back, I have the back 40, what I refer to as the back 40, which is about 50 square feet, raised bed, covered in wood chips. These wood chips have been breaking down now for over 2 years. This is my lemon tree that I've had since the very beginning of my garden. This is the very first thing I planted, my Meyer lemon tree and my Valencia orange, which you'll see over there. So over here I have these big tomato plants were planted in ground in this bed in February. They were just 2 scrawny little stems that I had overwintered in 3-gallon pots in the back. They were volunteers that came up in pepper plants. And I didn't get rid of 2 of them, and I planted them right there, and I have not pruned them, and they're enormous. In addition, I planted these. All of these were volunteers. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a lot of borage, and all of my shallots are still in the bottom down here. I have not taken them out. I have a pot of African blue basil right here, which is the same thing I'm growing in ground over there. My snapdragon in a pot here, and I have Jerusalem artichokes in this pot. And behind that I have the lemon verbena, which is one of the best smells in the garden. This lemon verbena was completely cut back down to this tall, and it has exploded. All of this is the lemon verbena. That's planted in ground. And behind that we have lemongrass, a clump of lemongrass, and behind that we have the Valencia orange tree. Down here we have my black turtle beans, which are blooming. This is the challenge when you get everything so cramped. I only have about a 16-inch walkway right here between my back 40 and my 4x8 raised bed, which is where right now I'm growing black turtle beans. They're flowering, and I do have some little beans here. This bean has been very good to me and done really well in the back, so I decided to try it in the front this year. It's going to be very difficult to move through here, but I'm going to try. This is what happens when you don't prune tomatoes. You can see how close I am to the street. This Cape gooseberry got huge. Never grown that before. It was a volunteer. I don't know where it came from. But the stems go down to the ground and then back up again because they are not supported. I've got celery down here under the tree. Over here I have an eggplant which has been getting eaten up, which I'm not happy about. I was hoping it would get big before the fig totally leafed out, and that didn't happen. The borage has about run its course over here. I have huge figs on both of my trees. Down here I have melon sage, which I don't eat, but the flowers are so gorgeous. I keep them for the bees. Tiny little red flowers. Still have some nasturtium blooming, although it's run its course. It looks kind of bad. And this is an overwintered tomato, which has tomatoes on it. This is an ever-bearing Valencia orange tree. And this is the blooming celery. It's about close to 5 feet tall, this one piece. The bees are out in force today. They're loving what's left of the nasturtium and the borage. They're loving the borage. There are lots of figs. There's 6 or 8 on each branch. And the brown turkey figs, of course, produce huge figs. This is the African blue basil. There are a total of 3 plants in this field of flowers here, and I'm going to try to slip through here. This is Sweet Annie, which is a volunteer. When the African blue basil was cut way back, I noticed that it was right at the bottom of that trapezoid bed, and it is going to reach up and be much taller than the African blue basil. This borage doesn't have any support, so I think the first wind it's probably going to get blown down. Over here we have the camellias. I have aloe growing in this big pot here. That's all one pot. This is a fern that I had before I actually planted the garden. In fact, all 4 of these plants in the corner were here before. But because the camellia is so dense and blocks the sunlight, these do well in the shade and vegetables would not. As soon as we start getting to a little bit of light over there, you see I have the fennel, which is in its glory right now. The fennel is right against the fence on this side of the sidewalk. Beyond that are the pineapple guavas. We'll take a look at those from another angle. But on this side of the fence we have marjoram, which is blooming, and the bees love it. And I'm seeing a lot of syrphid flies today, so the syrphid flies are loving this marjoram as well. Backing up, I have a tomato plant, cherry tomato plant, and once again did not prune this, so this is going to be wild and crazy. There's actually a separate tomato plant in here. I'm hoping this tomato plant behind the other one has a chance, but it's got to reach up fast to get to the sun. I have 2 big pots of alyssum, and in these pots I have 2 Sweet Annie. I had so many volunteers and I've planted them all over the garden. This is an Italian oregano, the yellowish one. And I have 1 carrot that I thought was going to bloom, and it... Oh, wait. Hold on. I'm so excited. But beneficial insects love carrot blooms. So it finally put up a flower stalk. I just had 1 carrot there. This is my cozy corner. Normally I have my red 2 chairs and table here. This is the gate that leads to the left side of the house, and this gate really sticks. I'm just going to give you a quick look. This was my first rain barrel setup, just coming right off the roof. This is not the best way to do it. It's much better to do an in, to go from the pipe into here and not go on here, because this gets full of debris from the roof. If you have water standing, I use these mosquito dunks everywhere to keep down the spread of mosquito larvae. And back there I have a bunch of succulents, mostly Queen of the Night. That's jade. This is almost a different form of jade. It's very popular. And all this is Queen of the Night, which blooms only at night. And this is my bamboo on this side. My 30-plus-year-old plum tree, which is loaded. Somebody just turned on hot water in my house. And that's my tankless water heater, which I had installed last fall. Gorgeous plums on this tree. I can't wait to share those with you when they ripen. That's another Sweet Annie volunteer. I have 2 peppers in pots. This one's doing better than this one. These are the loofah, and I need to thin these down to 1 per pot and plant those out ASAP. And I have 1 Phileas blue that I picked up at Home Depot, and I have an herb and a watermelon, and all of those really have to get planted. Over here I have okra and calendula limping along, not doing too well, and over here I have hibiscus. Over here, someone asked this morning, these are geraniums, and they're always gorgeous, almost always blooming all year long. I couldn't ask for anything prettier right outside my front window. This is rain barrel setup number 3. This does come right off the roof. I have 3 olive trees. These are sort of decorative trees that we had here before I started my garden. And succulents were planted at the base of them. So I have a ton of succulents. This is a triangle with rounded sides, anchored by my distinctive pine tree. In this triangle I have roses, 4 o'clocks, alyssum, mint, milkweed, Mexican marigold, strawberries in pots, and Sweet Annie, a pepper plant, succulents, and my dragon cactus. This is my property. I wanted you to get a wide view from end to end. It's about 5,700 square foot lot, long that way, and let's take a closer look. I used to have a ton of plants in Parkway number 1. Now I have 3 pineapple guavas, 1 Mexican pink guava, which is squished, and I have some comfrey left, and some cannas, and a lot of wood chips. Little bit different story on Parkway number 2. I have a big tomato that I overwintered. I have a number of flowers. I have a princess flower bush that's about half there. I have a weeping acacia tree, which I never should have planted. I have some California native flowers, some aster and goldenrod, which is very invasive, and I have to keep it in pots. And more drought-tolerant plants, as well as snapdragon, milkweed, and I've got leeks in pots growing, and this is where I grew my daikon radish. As you can see, this is really my only open, sunny spot left in the garden because everything else is jammed. And so yesterday, we planted a Three Sisters grouping in containers, and you'll see that on my workday video, and put it right smack dab in the middle of the driveway. On this side of the driveway, I have a huge rosemary plant that blooms at least twice a year. It's usually blooming most of the year. And it goes wraps all the way around the corner. Obviously I could prune this back and should. And I've got freesias that are still blooming in these pots. I have cardamom in pots. And they're looking a little yellowish, the leaves are. Maybe they need a little bit more nutrition. So I'm gonna have to look at that. This Sweet Annie we potted up yesterday. And the reason I have things in pots down here is because of this olive tree sucks up all the water and everything dies. If you recall, I had the most stunning cranberry hibiscus right here. It was 12 feet tall, bright red leaves, red flowers, and it was such a welcome to this garden. But it died, and when we dug out the roots, they were all eaten up. So everything goes in a pot now, down here. Some snapdragon, more alyssum, and there's actually a couple of strawberries in those pots, but they don't get any sun, so. Here's a better look at this little section. This literally was driveway, and Eric carved out about 18 inches wide and about 6 feet long. And I planted a number of different things in here. Last year I had red Malabar spinach growing all over this trellis. This year the borage just happened. I didn't plant it, it came through from the other side, and it's loving being here, so it fills out the trellis and looks pretty. The apple tree is its first year. Just tried a couple of apples, cracked them open on my live stream this morning if you want to check that out. And of course I've still got nasturtium blooming, and my fig trees. And I put my apples in bags just as a precaution because one of my viewers suggested that wasps might attack my apples. Here's a little bit closer look at Parkway number 2. This is the weeping acacia tree that I never should have planted. It does have edible seed pods, which is why I included it in my food forest. But it has yet to make a seed pod, and all it does is block light from the plants on the ground. So that's why it was a mistake. This is the Victorian blue salvia that couldn't be a more beautiful color, but it gets covered in mildew. Down here I have the leeks in pots that aren't quite fat enough yet. I have cannas that have not bloomed, they're bright red. Hairy vetch growing along the fence. Hairy vetch provides a lot of nutrition to the soil, but you want to cut it back before it takes over and it goes to seed because it really spreads and reseeds. In fact, I didn't plant any of this, it came up in compost. I have snapdragon. This is the princess flower that almost died that looks kind of beautiful. This is the reverse view of Parkway number 2, and this is the apricot tree that I salvaged from across the street. That property will be completely bulldozed at some point. This is the blooming comfrey, absolutely gorgeous. And this is this silvery wispy stuff is the California fuchsia. And I've got the grapevine growing up into the princess flower. The princess flower actually looks like it might survive and has more leaves on it than it has had. I've got one of my worm bins in each Parkway. So this is full of kitchen scraps and worms. So this is the reverse view. This is the rosemary. Oops, just broke that. And down here I have the California natives. I've got woodland strawberry. I've got goldenrod. Since this gets virtually no sun down here, I just keep some ground cover down here. This is a bush I planted before I ever started my garden, and it needs to be pruned. And this is the olive tree, the big one with the little olives. This is where all of my volunteer tomatoes came from. And you can see that I missed a few. In this corner of the Parkway I have penstemon, Hummingbirds love bell-shaped flowers like this. And this is the volunteer sweet pea. This is the reverse view of what we saw when we looked out from the front garden out to the fennel. So here's the fennel, here's the fence, and here's my artichoke. This is the small plant that Patty brought me from Las Vegas. She planted seeds from Baker Creek. Now I'm starting to believe that this is not the big fat plump artichokes that we enjoy in the store. I think this is a different variety, but at least I've got artichokes. This is the sidewalk entrance to my garden. And over here we have the pineapple guavas, of course. And this is the pitcher sage that has jumped across from here. This is a California native, and hummingbirds and bees love these flowers. And the camellias are up there. The guavas have almost finished blooming. There are a few left. Here's a couple of petals. And they are so sweet. It's like eating a piece of fruit. As you can see, we're experiencing a major June gloom. And we have no sun. But when the sun does come out, I am ready. We potted up all of these tomatoes yesterday. These were all volunteers that came out of the back of there, as well as the ones in my garden. These are my blueberries. I need to harvest blueberries today. These are Johnny Jump Ups with toy onions. This is the papaya tree that was planted in ground and taken back out. I was going to return it. I thought it was going to die. It didn't die. It's still in the pot. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Half of the leaves are yellow. And in this pot I have a volunteer squash. I don't know what it is. And I have a very big beet. And this pot I have garlic that's putting up a flower. And I have a volunteer squash. I've got a pepper plant down here, and I've got volunteer vetch growing out of these pots. I need to train this Chinese pumpkin to grow along this fence. This is the passion fruit. As you can see, the flowers are so exotic. Look at that. I mean, what bee would not be attracted to that? This is the calamandin. I put it in this pot, and once the Chinese pumpkin took off, I think the calamandin is kind of not as happy. There is a nice big fruit on there, as you can see, and these are very, very tart. This is the loquat tree. No sign of any fruit. And I have another pineapple guava right here. So this is the Jerusalem artichoke. And over here we have the 6 tomato plants in 7-gallon grow bags. And as soon as they get a little bit bigger, they're going to need support. And I am going to prune these, just keep them under control. This is my sugar cane, and yes, it is sweet. We've only tried it once. I always say, wherever you've got sun, if you don't have an in-ground spot, use a container. I've got celery growing in containers, lettuce, beets, strawberries, sweetgrass, which we just trimmed back yesterday, more beets, more lettuce, blueberries. I've got onions, squash, fruit trees, tomatoes. I've got so many things growing in pots. And potatoes. Potatoes grow great in pots. This is where I had my huge container garden last year. I had a nylon trellis that went all the way back on this wall, and the results were mixed. I was not pleased with how cucumbers and squash, they just need more sun. I'm sorry, they just need more sun and more airflow. And another thing to consider when you're putting anything against a fence is there's no airflow from the back. So once again, those spores, those mildew spores, get trapped and they don't do as well. So I'm not doing that this year. I've still got potatoes in pots that are still developing, And I've got some 4 o'clocks and some beets here, but that's about all that I've got growing on this side. Like I said, I have a lot of succulents, and these were given to me by Charles Malky at Ivy Organics. And when I came home, I had so many, I just stuck them in this big mixing tray. What I need to do is take those out and pot them up individually. In this pot over here, we just planted more potatoes yesterday. Here are the remaining Sweet Annie plants that were volunteers. And Toomey and Steve went home with their very own plant last week. This is my beloved okra. Nothing happening so far. And it's been at least a week. Someone just wrote and asked me about my workstation. Well, my workstation took a big leap up last year when my friend Hazel gave me this wooden table. And this is nice to set seedlings on, to get some sun, to acclimate them to the outside, and also to work on. And this is my indispensable shelf unit that was originally purchased, I think, from Home Depot. And you can put so much weight and so much stuff on this. This is metal and it does rust, and I'm seeing that it's rusted. It was powder coated, but hey, now it's been 4 years, I guess, and it's rusted. I have it right against the wall, so, you know, about halfway back it doesn't get rained on, but all this out here gets rained on. I try to pack a lot of things against the side of the house, and I've got my red wheelbarrow tucked in right there. It lives under the bay kitchen window right there, so it doesn't get too much rain. And then I pack everything into this shelving unit, and obviously the heavier stuff goes on the bottom. And there's enough room underneath it to slide my mixing trays, which is awesome. And then I just have some various containers of things. This is a really inexpensive little plastic unit that we put together, and it's really a mess inside. It's got all the little stuff that shouldn't get rained on. I made a whole video on doing this concrete work and setting up these barrels and getting them attached to the wall, to the downspout. These two are full, and this hose goes into that garbage can. This is full, and it's been sitting here full for months. And this is what's left of my Comfrey tea, kind of cooking in there. I just wanted to point out, I do try to be sustainable in many ways, and I have a clothesline. And I love to hang whatever I can on this 20-foot line between the fence and the fence. And also I have solar panels, I have a tankless water heater, I drive a hybrid vehicle, which is 10 years old, and I, of course, recycle everything. The problem with recycling now is that China has stopped buying our cardboard, so we don't know what's going to happen with all of our trash. This is what you see out of the sliding glass doors, this sort of beautiful trellis garden. I have a lot of succulents that need very little care. I did plant celery in this bed at one point last year. This is all a passion fruit vine. If you're new to my channel and you came to me through my loofah video, this is where I grew loofah. A lot of people who saw that video could not believe or understand me taking out that 30-year-old wisteria that was totally took up this entire trellis. When your structures start moving, it costs a great deal of money, and I am not a carpenter or a contractor. I'm a great supervisor, but I can't do those big hard jobs of moving walls or creating new walls. And this is an old garage, and when that wall moved 3 inches, I had to do something. Here's a quick peek at the beautiful pale pink camellias that bloom in December and January. So this is the opposite view, the back side of the house. This is where I do a lot of my live streams up on my deck there, and this was all part of our green renovation that we did in 2007. So go back and look at my retrospective video so you can see how things looked back then as opposed to now. This is a eucalyptus tree. If I had this to do over, I probably would not have planted this tree. It has a lot of little nuts. The bees do love the flowers though, and it grows nice and tall and skinny. It doesn't spread out, which was a good choice for this little spot here, but it is messy. And over here I have my green stalk vertical growing systems, and the only thing I have growing are the seeds from the beets. So I'm just waiting for those to finish, and the arugula seeds. And one more thing is my little raised bed over here. This is my last growing spot, and this is my raised bed in the back. It doesn't get a lot of sun here. I grow a lot of potatoes. I usually grow the turtle beans in the summer. This year I haven't done that yet. I've got a few carrots and potatoes in here right now, and that's it. This is boysenberry, and they're just coming, and looks like I have quite a few this year for the first time. I have given this no fertilizer whatsoever since last year, and I see at least 24 berries from this one pot, so that's exciting. And here are the arugula. Probably could be collecting these seeds right now, but these bead pods are not quite there yet. So there you have it. That is my garden, and I love my garden, and I hope you can tell. I love plants. I would just love to grow as many plants as I possibly could, with an emphasis on edible, obviously, because I'd like to be able to feed myself. But at any rate, thank you so much for watching and liking my videos, sharing them with your friends, and supporting this channel in ways that you can find in the description below. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. If you enjoyed this video, please watch these. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And I'll see you in the next video.